recording. Welcome to What a Word is Worth, a space for creative minds to speak about viable ways to heal the world through writing and other inventive mediums. This is your host, Marianela Medrano. I am the founder of Palabra Counseling and Training Center, where words are given as medicine. And this is the space where I invite people I like. And if there is something called love at first sight, there is also something called sympathetic response, mutuality, and just plain like I like you and see you, non-romantic encounters. And that was what I experienced when I met today's guest, Tim Ream. I arrived at a retreat center in New Hampshire, and there was the widest, warmest, welcoming smile coming from him. And it was a very cold day. So for me, it felt like heaven. So I connected right away. And then it was cold for the duration of our time there. And from time to time, someone will come and hug me and just keep me warm. And that was Tim. So I am so grateful for that. I am so grateful, Tim, for your grace, for your warmth. And I welcome you to this space to talk about, we're going to be talking about a little bit of everything, but especially your novel. So we're going to try to talk about it without giving too much. But I can say about Tim that he's a modern bodhisattva, an eco-sattva who cares for the earth and the entire pluriverse. He's, as I say, the author of the novel Fallen Water. So welcome, Tim.
Thank you very much. Those were very sweet words and reminded me of some sweet moments on that cold New Hampshire retreat.
Yes. Do you remember your hugs? They were so welcome.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of wrap you up.
So yes, thank you, Tim, for coming and for writing such a beautiful novel that we'll go more into it. But let me start with my standard question about my curiosity about how and when did you find the writer in you? And, you know, the premise of these podcasts, these conversations, is that there is healing in words. So it's two-part question, right? When did you realize, oh, I have a writer in me? And do you believe that words are healing?
Yeah, I guess I've gotten positive feedback in writing throughout much of my life, but it was not writing fiction. I'm an attorney, at least in theory, and so I've done legal writing, and that's often been well received. So and I've done a lot of persuasive writing in legal ways and as part of my activism. So I've always enjoyed the turn of a phrase. I've always enjoyed trying to take people through a narrative, but I kind of refer to it as sort of like it's nonfiction storytelling. I was always trying to tell stories of activists standing up for the earth and trying to protect it, sometimes at great sacrifice to themselves. But it was very new for me to take on fiction. This is the first novel and first really any kind of creative writing I've done anything like this. So in some ways I could say I didn't really discover the writer in me until I published the book. Somebody read it and said it was good.
Wow.
Then finally I have to be like, okay, I thought it was pretty good, but other people are liking it. And so,
Yeah, most definitely. So what did he do then to write it for you when you think about, I mean, you as we were saying before, what you accomplished with the novel is that you opened a window into what Zen life is, the good, the bad, and the in between, right? So how does he feel to know that? What did it do to you to write it?
So I think it's easier for me to describe Zen teachings
Mm-hmm.
than it is to fully embody them.
Uh-huh.
So in
Hence the main character, huh?
right. So in a sense, it's like I've kind of developed my own medicine, and now I just
Uh,
need to kind of keep taking my own medicine on a regular basis,
mhm.
to listen to my own advice
Yeah.
and try to put that into practice. But also, I guess I should say that there are a couple of teachers of mine that have read the work and reflected
Mm,
back on it. And it's been a big affirmation to me because,
mhm.
you think maybe you understand some concepts, you think you can explain
Yeah.
them, and then to have teachers be like, "Oh yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
that was good." That's been that's been settling for me in my own
Yeah.
personal practice.
Yeah. So it has been an affirmation of, okay, there is an understanding of the path, and with all the curvy lines and the potholes and everything that that is so well expressed. We're gonna come back to the novel, but help our audience understand what eco-dharma is and why is it so important to you? I remember our time at the retreat and how I could perceive your commitment, right? And this the seriousness that is wrapped in a lot of humor, but the seriousness is always there. What is one simple way to explain eco-dharma to someone who is saying, what is that?
Yeah. I'm much more interested in the practical nature of things, putting things into
Mhm,
practice than the theory. So I'm going to give you my very practical version of
mhm,
eco-dharma. There are two distinct parts of it to me. One
mhm.
is bringing practice, and by that I mean Buddhist practice, meditation practice, mindfulness practice, bringing that to earth activists.
Yeah.
And the other part is bringing earth activists uh, wait, let's see, bringing practitioners.
Mhm.
Okay, let me, I didn't say that very well. One is bringing practice to activists. The other is bringing activism to
Into the
practitioners.
practice.
So,
Yeah.
so when I say earth activists, of course, I would wish this for people who are working on race issues and economic issues
Mhm,
and gender
mhm,
issues and war and immigration and so on. But
mhm,
but my thing has always been earth activism, and I see a lot of people out there that are overwhelmed and their hearts are hurting and their bodies are hurting.
mhm.
The energy and that they put into their work, the stress that they feel, the sometimes extreme hopelessness that can
Hopelessness.
result
Yeah.
as from all
Mhm,
this.
mhm,
And I think mindfulness, meditation, and the Dharma have a lot to offer them.
mhm,
But on the other hand, I see a lot of people who have taken vows, who are
mhm,
on a daily basis putting into practice awareness and care, loving kindness.
mhm,
And I would love to see them find ways to express that through activism that can have a bigger field of impact than
mhm.
maybe just the person that they're with right in front of them. And
Yeah.
so I want those people who spend a lot of time on the cushions, who have really sort of, they're in many cases very wise folks with open hearts. I want them to get out in the world and do something for the earth again, or for some of these other causes. And I want the people who are really hurting from having done that for years or for all their life to have some of the sweetness of the Dharma helping to get them through to
Mhm,
the
mhm.
next thing.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, I don't want us to give the novel away, right?
No.
But page 157
Mhm.
addresses the peace of the great earth. Yes, yes. So,
Yeah, so I guess I could say, just by a little way of background, there's a Zen master in the book. It's
uh-huh,
her name is Guda,
yeah.
and she's teaching in a particular Dharma talk here. So
Mm-hmm,
she's got everybody in her meditation hall sitting,
mm-hmm,
listening to her as she teaches. And so I'm just, yeah, I guess I'll just read kind of most of this page.
yeah.
Just starting at the right at the top of page 157. So
Mm-hmm,
in many ways, our lives are soft and easy compared to our Dharma ancestors, the ancient ones.
mm-hmm,
But in one important sense, they had something fundamentally important that we don't have. She paused, letting the suggestion settle with them for a moment. They had the peace of the great earth. They knew their tragic misfortunes were merely the natural cycles of life, flowing from time immemorial. Do you see? A great river might destroy a city, as rivers had for thousands of years, but a wise sage would take solace knowing nothing would destroy the river. Tremendous waves might rise from the ocean and sweep whole villages to the sea, but the ocean would recede the very next day. Death unspeakable might visit a land, breaking the hearts of all who survived, but that was death,
mm-hmm,
not the end of birth.
mm-hmm,
A lonely monk in a high mountain pass, bowing to a passing snow leopard, didn't think, how long will there be snow to support her kin? An ancient teacher in a tropical forest didn't think her students might never see the magnificent tigers she was honored to glimpse. Our distant ancestors could look at the profound suffering around them and still know these were the natural cycles of the great earth, as it had been for their parents' parents and for their teachers' teachers. Not us. We are denying reality if we don't accept the possibility that tiger birth itself might be ending. We have to acknowledge that soon there might be no snow where snow leopards nurse their kittens. These are not natural cycles. They would be an end forever to the natural cycles of kitten birth and cat death that have lasted millions of years. So
yeah,
this teacher has named the great earth
yeah.
as the theme of her practice period. And and she's making kind of an out on the limb teaching here in some ways, because everything is impermanent. The very earth
Mm-hmm,
itself is impermanent. This is a Buddhist
mm-hmm,
teaching. World
mm-hmm.
systems have been destroyed for millions of years. World systems will be destroyed again. But on the other hand, we have been evolving from time immemorial since
Yeah.
life first appeared on the planet with snow leopards and
Mm-hmm,
Bengal tigers.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And we can't just wave our hands and say everything is impermanent
mm-hmm,
and then go about our business or live our luxurious Western lives as if that didn't matter. So
mm-hmm.
she's, I think, wanting to bring that forward without denying that greater teaching.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. It's one of my favorite pages in the novel because it's this idea, well, that the whole idea of the great the peace that is within the great earth, but also the transient and the permanent as this dance that is undeniable. And it was so beautifully captured. And then going back to the eco-dharma, right, to be able to invite people to see the scarcity and the abundance at the same time, right?
Yeah, I think environmental activists, they're they're in a really advantageous place
Mm-hmm,
to learn from some of the teachings of Buddhism.
mm-hmm,
Many people who work for the earth have spent times in really wild places
yeah,
where, you know, the humans are modern humans are impacting the entire world. We know that.
yeah.
Um, and actually ancient indigenous people were
Mm-hmm,
impacting landscapes from time
mm-hmm,
immemorial pretty much everywhere on earth.
mm-hmm,
So this isn't unusual, but there are wild places even today where nature is functioning much like it has for thousands or millions of years without very much human influence. And environmental activists are naturally drawn in many cases to these places. And there you can feel the peace.
mm-hmm,
There you can feel the timelessness of what the earth does, the beauty of its diversity
Yeah.
and its expressions of life. And I think this puts you in a place to have a settled heart and to be able to simultaneously understand the profound nature of this
Mm-hmm.
universe and our own insignificance in it. And yet at the same time, our interconnection to all of it.
Yeah.
So I think environmental activists, many of them are right on the edge of being able to open their hearts to some of these teachings and benefit from them. But of course, the Dharma has this beauty of having 2,500 years of structure and helping people figure out the approaches and the teachings and the learnings. So
Mm-hmm.
I think
And that
that's,
has
no,
oh,
go ahead.
go, no, no, you go ahead.
Well, just that's a little bit, I think, what Gouda, my Zen master, was trying to do in that.
Right, right. And the other thing that is very clear to me that you're pointing throughout the novel is these multiple crises, right? That seem to be the main point for me. It's like, hey, it's not just this, it's also this, but also with hope wrapped in that. I think you struck a balance between seeing the harsh reality and also showing the agency we can embrace through mostly through the words of the master, the Zen master. But what is helping you keep a balance? Maybe you started saying that just now. What's
Yeah, I
keeping
think
you in
it
that
might be best
balance?
to use her words.
She's
Uh,
very wise.
yes, somehow that happened, and she points out that hey, we're all broken. You know,
Mhm,
we've all
mhm,
gone through incredible heartbreaks in our life,
mhm.
especially anybody that's paying attention to the earth, or look
Yeah.
what's happening in the Middle East, or has looked at what's going on with racism and white supremacy,
Mhm.
the immigration issue. We can go the disparity of wealth and poverty.
Yeah.
If you paid attention to any of this stuff and you admit it, your heart is breaking from these things. And then that's on top of the heartbreak of a lost love or a loved
Mhm,
one that's passed away. So this
mhm,
is just the human condition. And this
mhm.
is what, Shakyamuni Buddha taught us 2,500 years ago.
Yeah.
Birth, old age, sickness, and
Yeah.
death.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
are what life is all about, and they hurt. We're suffering, and it's so easy sometimes to get caught up in our own little trip.
Mhm,
Like, oh,
mhm,
it's me that's suffering.
mhm,
Don't you understand? I'm the one that's hurting, and that's what my main character is really caught up in. He's wrapped himself up a little bit in victimhood,
mhm,
and in fact, not just a little bit. And he kind of has a very self-centered perspective,
mhm,
and she's trying to help him and her other
mhm,
students realize like this is actually the human condition.
mhm.
And then there's a promise offered in Buddhism, right? It's not just that there's suffering. Among the Four Noble Truths, one of them is there is a way out of suffering.
There is a way out,
Yeah.
right,
and
right.
and it comes from compassionate awareness. It comes from having an open heart and paying attention and ultimately seeing the impermanence of things and your interconnection to all being, and to realize that you're not a separate self all by
Mhm,
yourself on an
mhm,
island. You are exactly the world around you,
mhm,
inextricably wrapped up in it. And 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 that's a promise that is offered here, that there is liberation from the bondage of just reacting,
yeah,
reacting
yes,
based on our
yeah,
karmic past. But
right.
with our open-hearted awareness, we have a chance to leap beyond that and
Mhm.
and be a liberated being in the world through our practice.
And that the liberation, the promise is in seeing the interbeing, the interconnectivity of things, right? Because when I think what I'm hear you say is that when we get trapped in the me story, and especially the poor me story, that's adding unnecessary suffering, right?
Yeah. And
Um,
and a deep awareness of that inner being is the liberation. It's
Mhm,
that
mhm,
practice of seeing deeply the non-separate nature of all reality, the
mhm,
interdependence of all reality. That is the very liberation itself.
mhm, mhm. Another regenerative angle in your novel is, again, going back to what you just said a minute ago, is seeing karma as a possible vector or compass to determine our orientation, right? And one of the things that one of the characters thing seems to bring home is that everything matters,
Yeah,
right?
everything matters. And that's a fundamental teaching of Buddhism, right? How
Yeah.
I like to say, how you open the door as you go out into the world in the morning matters.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing it with
Mm-hmm.
an open heart,
Mm-hmm.
you're doing it with awareness, then you're going to walk out into the world different than if you're like, oh my God, I'm 15 minutes late from work and I can't believe that thing happened this morning. And did you see what was happening in the news? And I
Yeah.
didn't even
Yeah.
pay attention. And I can't even remember if I locked my door when I left the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are very
Yeah.
different ways to enter the world, and there are very different people that you are bringing forth in those two
Yeah.
cases into the world, and how you're going to respond. So, yeah, one of my characters likes to at some point wants to believe that maybe he's beyond karma a little bit, but you can never get beyond your karma. You can have your waking up, your liberation within it, but your
Mm-hmm.
past doesn't just magically go away, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As we know with the main character, right?
Right.
That the past, but the other important angle that I see in the novel, that it's is trauma, and how uh, trauma was, I think, again, I'm trying not to give away the main points in the novel because I hope our audience is going to buy it and read
I hope
it.
so.
But trauma was following this person. It's almost like the main character didn't have a chance right from the get-go. So going back to the how do we separate that pain? How can we discern, right?
Yeah.
A
Yeah, the main
way.
character, he had a very traumatic childhood and had buried it,
Mhm.
had kind of repressed
Among many other things.
among many other things. And it was in sitting, letting his mind slow down, maybe, settling his body, that um something difficult came up.
Mhm.
And he had just enough wherewithal to sit and watch it and not shove it back down and repress it
Mhm.
again. And
Mhm.
I really think in some ways that's mostly what we've got, paying attention to it, trying to get yourself settled enough that you're like, all right, I can look at the difficult things in my life that are not
Mhm.
to see, and then letting them come up. And then when you're there sitting quietly, you're not gonna hopefully get into your normal reactive trip. Oh, this is
Mhm.
stupid. Why am I thinking about this? Let me have a drink,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
or calling up a buddy who is going to talk you down from the edge
Mhm.
and tell you all the things you want to hear when maybe that's not what's best for you. So I think what we have with our trauma, the best thing that we have, I've found, is just quietly letting it come up and not
Mhm.
reacting. Because when
Mhm.
we have these habit energies, if stimulus A comes up and our body always reacts with B, when we're quietly sitting, sometimes we can let A come up and then maybe B doesn't happen. And so now
Mhm.
we've actually broken a habit energy, and we have
Mhm.
a little bit more freedom there, because before, whenever it was A, it was always B. And now A came up, and actually I was able to sit still through that.
Yeah.
You know what? This time I didn't even cry.
Mhm.
That's like I'm finally coming to peace with that. And then I don't have to be reactive and I have a little bit more freedom.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so it's in the watching the reactivities, in the watching and with compassion, right? Because if we can't watch reactivity with the judging mind and then create more suffering,
Yeah,
But when we're watching it with compassion, as you are indicating, then it changes the.
and Guda, my teacher, she points out that some of us are really good at compassion when it comes to everyone except for one person,
Mhm,
and that's
mhm.
ourselves. This isn't
Right,
everybody, but there are
right.
definitely some people,
Yeah,
and I think they might more often be women, who
yeah,
are great at having compassion for everyone else, but when it comes to themselves, they haven't really completely open-heartedly accepted that they too deserve just as much compassion as other beings do, and sitting's another place where it's good to practice that.
yeah, yeah. It's really, as someone who has painfully sat through so many days of meditation, and I kept saying, yes, I know this. Yes, I've been there. And to know that that's ultimately the withstanding that with compassion is what can get us on the other side.
Yeah.
Um, and you capture it so well. So throughout the novel, there is a strong display of what I call eco-suffering, right? Um, which Heller signals as not only anger but deep sadness in response to the clear depictions of how we are wounding ecosystems and further damaging, influencing the climate change. What I kept thinking, how early in life did you become aware of
Mm.
eco suffering? Um, and is that what led you to where you are in your journey, both in the spiritual sense and the advocacy that you well it's all it's the advocacy is also a spiritual practice, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but engage practice that you have.
So in answering the question, I think I'm going to have to give away
Mm.
my age.
It's
You know, the
okay.
first Earth Day in 1970, I was 7 years old, and I was wrapped up in it. It was cool. Teachers can be so revolutionary, and
Mhm,
um, they were young, people who just went to college in the 60s, and now
mhm,
here they are in classrooms in 1970, and they're turning their kids on to this ecology movement. And back
mhm,
then, the smog in places like LA was so bad.
mm,
River in Ohio was catching fire. You know, we as little kids like had all these illustrations of what was wrong. But and so I kind of got wrapped up in that movement along with there was the civil rights movement, and there
mm,
was the first wave feminism was happening. And so I was a part of, I wanted to be on the good side, right? I wanted to be with the
mm,
good team, and it was clear which one that was, but that was obviously, the depth of a 7-year-old. Back then, I think I understood pollution as like, well, we were polluting rivers, but then if we
mm,
stop polluting rivers, they'll be clean. And we
mhm,
were polluting the air, but if we stop polluting the air, it'll be clean. And really, I think it was when I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I was in a little country called Lesotho, surrounded by South Africa during apartheid. But
mm,
afterwards, I hitchhiked all the way from Southern Africa to Nigeria, and hitchhiking 6 months across Africa, I started to see, not that it wasn't happening in my own country, but I grew up in
mhm,
the Midwest and I had never
mhm,
seen the destruction of ecosystems. Everything was destroyed by the time I was born. All the fields were already plowed. But so I didn't see the old growth logging that was happening in the 70s and the 80s in the American West, but I saw
mm,
forests being destroyed in Africa, and started to get a sense by traveling the globe, getting a sense that it really isn't that big a planet.
mhm,
There are
mhm,
enough human beings
mm,
really could destroy it all if we weren't
mhm,
careful. And that was when a sense of urgency,
mhm,
sense of understanding that like, oh my gosh, we
mhm,
need to do
mhm,
something. And I guess that includes me.
mhm,
And so
mhm.
so I really began an environmental career kind of from that point on.
Is that what got you there, or are you saying that the awakening in terms of the damage, right? The human damage became clear there, or were you in Africa pursuing that already?
Well, I guess I should throw in that I think I've
Hmm.
always loved the earth. I've
Yeah,
always loved ecosystems.
yeah.
I was lucky to have a family that went camping.
Hmm.
Our best camping place was a little place called Devil's Lake in Wisconsin.
Hmm.
It's a glacial lake with glacial moraines, and
Hmm.
see the forest and climb the cliffs and see the beautiful lake. And we went fishing as a family. And then I think maybe between fifth grade and sixth grade, we took a big trip out west and
Hmm.
rafted down the Colorado River and saw the Badlands and saw the Grand Canyon. And I was like, wow,
Hmm.
wild national park ecosystems. Like, this is amazing. I love this stuff. But the sense then was these are parks. They're
Yeah,
protected, right?
yeah,
So these will
yeah,
always be here, right?
yeah.
But I think when I was traveling through Africa and I was seeing these other landscapes that were also magnificent, but people could just come in and cut it all
Yeah,
right down.
yeah,
Then I was
yeah.
then I had this that I think for me was like, I got to do something about that.
Uh-huh.
That's been my life pretty much ever since.
Yeah, and I mean, another thing that I appreciated, there is a lot of poetry in the language and um, the photographic offerings that throughout the novel, right? There is so I think that 7-year-old you was really doing research that emptied out in the novel, right? But how much was there additional research? Because there's a great amount of information about plants, about oh, so much is there. Did you do additional research in writing, or were you just letting the 7-year-old have a moment?
Well, it wasn't the 7-year-old, it was a whole lifetime, but I've kind of taken on over my life studying. It started with, I think, the night sky, and
Mm,
then it was birds, and boy, did I fall head over heels for birds.
mhm,
And then flowers, and then I started getting into reptiles. And this is, kind of what I posit my main character has done in his
mm,
life as well, that he loves hiking through these landscapes, and
mhm,
boy, the more you love, the more you want to know. And so
mhm,
it's one thing to say, wow, that's a pretty pink flower. But then, you see it a couple times, you're like, wait, is that different than the other flowers that I saw,
mhm,
200 miles up the coast? And I just kind
mhm,
of want to know and dive in. So actually, I didn't have to do too much research for the book, just because I sort of, I mean, they're little throughout the novel. They're little love letters to the earth,
mhm.
or really
Yeah,
they're love letters
yeah,
to the Big Sur landscape, the Ventana wilderness, which is where this novel is set and where I've spent a lot of time practicing Zen Buddhism. So that
yeah.
gets sprinkled throughout I because I can't not do that.
And it's so it comes through so beautifully. Another interesting point your main character brings up is that people in California and other places cut down trees to prevent fires, and that was one of those things that I went like, oh yeah, this is all right. I mean, it's not right, but what the character was saying. So they cut down trees to prevent fires, and in so doing, they are depriving us of oxygen and other beneficial means. So, what other ecological aberrations are being committed in the name of sanity and practicality for, the members of the audience who want to know, okay, what is it that we must stop now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in some ways the answer to this is really deep. And
Mm-hmm,
I go back to a beautiful book written by a Zen teacher by the name of Gary Snyder, one of the
mm-hmm.
original Beat poets,
Yeah,
who
yeah.
wrote a book called Practice of the Wild.
Mm-hmm,
It's a classic of really of eco-dharma before people
mm-hmm.
probably even were using the term.
Yeah.
And he posits that the first sacrament, the first prayer, might have happened on the hunt.
Mm-hmm,
Because you have to feed your family, you have to eat, but you still know that that beautiful being that you just put a spear through
Mm-hmm.
was, a loving, conscious,
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
Being,
So
yeah.
you want to give gratitude, you want to ask forgiveness, y-
Mm-hmm.
you recognize your role in a greater cycle of the earth. And so, in a sense, the first vow in the Buddhist precepts is to vow to not kill. And then, of course, every meal, there we are killing,
Yeah.
right? So, in a sense, this is our entire lives.
Yeah.
It's we're breaking our vows to keep our vows. We're
Yeah.
harming the earth, even though we're trying to protect the earth.
Mm-hmm.
That can become an excuse, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People can say, well, you have to kill to eat, so, give me another steak, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are, you look at what our Buddhist ancestors have done, and what they've done is tried very carefully to live
Mm-hmm.
very simple lives so that
Mm-hmm.
their impacts on the earth are minimal. And this is a role model, I think, that I think we all would benefit from adopting. There are all kinds of beauties from that kind of simplicity. So it's one thing to say we have to kill to live.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another thing to say, I need to cut down that old growth forest because I want a nice redwood deck and it needs to be twice as big as the neighbors. So it's a constant dance. I sometimes ask myself, my standard for my lifestyle can be if everyone on the planet, and there's about 8 billion of us now,
Yeah.
all lived a lifestyle similar to the one I'm living, would the species and the ecosystems that are here now be here 7 generations from now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if not, I think I'm taking too much.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know. It's very hard to know. I mean, who can do that math? It's impossible, really. But you can take that as a standard, even though it's not an absolute bright line, and say, like, is it new clothes or is it thrift store? Is it a meat-based diet or is it a vegetarian diet?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
do I need a big SUV, or, can I walk? Can I take my bike, my
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
plug-in hybrid?
Mm-hmm.
And so we can constantly ask ourselves where we can be less wrapped up in destroying the earth for our own needs.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to say that it's all about consumer behavior, because what we also need to do is we need to rein in corporations and the governments that give them too
Yeah.
many passes, right?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
do think for lots of reasons that are probably beyond our little talk here,
Mm.
simplifying our own lifestyle is a step on the path to reining in those corporations and the governments that are not listening to us.
Yeah, because the excuse that I often hear is, oh, with the corporations, we can't do anything with what they're doing. So we might as well just keep going. So
Right.
I'm glad that you're saying this, because it is the examining how am I living, how much space am I taking, when to know when enough is enough for us, right? Because we convince ourselves that we
Yep.
need,
Right.
right?
Especially when,
Right.
you live a Western lifestyle and you look all around you at all the
Yeah,
wealth and all the people
yeah,
living extravagant lives. It's
yeah.
hard to think about a simpler life that can still be extremely, and I would say more fulfilling than
Mm-hmm,
than a life where I always say it this way: of the two
mm-hmm,
ways to have everything you want in life, wanting less is the easier.
mm-hmm,
And always
mm-hmm,
wanting more, 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 it can
mm-hmm,
be insatiable and it can
mm-hmm,
lead to
mm-hmm.
madness,
Yeah,
madness of the
yeah.
consumption around us.
Right. Yet that's not an easy thing, right? Because
Oh,
the wanting, right? The greed is almost mass produced,
yes,
right?
yes,
Through
absolutely.
media, through all the messages, right? It's so hard. We truly need to be present, to be mindful in order to be able to discern
The,
that.
the highest paid
Yeah,
psychologists in our world today are the top
yeah.
advertisers who are trying to figure out how to manipulate you into wanting something you had no
Because
idea even
something is
existed.
wrong with you.
Right. And you'll be so much happier if you just get it.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, including the self-care business, right?
Yeah. Oh,
The
yeah.
spirit, the spirituality is being packaged,
Yeah.
right? So
So,
that's also part of the conversation.
yep.
Um, so the main character um, who falls into a sweet trap, right? In one of the talks that the female Zen leader throws at him, he found a reason to exist, or perhaps her words kind of reminded him of his essence, especially at the end. And that's the part that we cannot touch, right? But he really saw himself through her eyes, right?
Yeah, it's one of the beauties of having a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are words? I mean, they're the basis of our conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and we are relational beings,
Yeah.
and we relate in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
Touch is important, and
Right.
and there are other ways that human beings relate, but a lot of the way we relate is with our words, whether they're spoken or
Yeah.
whether they're written. And sitting face to face with a teacher, with a mind of practice, with a
Mm-hmm.
body and a heart settled, and
Mm-hmm.
seeing what comes up and sharing that is an invaluable practice.
Mm-hmm.
And he has the benefit of doing it with her, and she knows how to push his buttons,
Mm-hmm.
and she has seen through him pretty thoroughly, and she helps him discover some of his own wisdom uh,
Mm-hmm.
through the benefit of her many years of practice and her own journey of self-discovery.
Yeah, yeah. And again, without giving away important information about the novel, but one of my teachers, Jack Cornfield, used to tell a story of a mother. Oh gosh, I can't tell the story without telling. But
Don't you
anyway,
dare give away the ending.
I won't. I won't. I want to thank you for bringing the beauty of compassion so vividly. To you made it so accessible at the end of the novel, and you really you were able. Compassion, the way I see it in the novel, is an extended metaphor that you kind of planted at the beginning, and you just kept us going and going. And then in the end, by the element of surprise, we also, at least I saw the true compassion, the true beauty, and the regenerative power of compassion, and the possibilities that are there are all kind of unfolded by the end, in the ending of the novel. Is there anything that you will change about the ending now? I don't
I
know if you are like me, like I'm forever editing, like even after I publish things.
well, there is something in Zen of letting go,
Uh-huh, yes.
and
I'm trying to learn that one.
yeah, and so I really feel like at a certain point I was like, that's it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
every once in a while, I'll go back and I'll look at a passage. I mean, some at some point a year will go by where I haven't looked at the novel, and then maybe I'll read something, and maybe I'll be like,
Mhm.
that could have been better,
That's
but
when you write the second then.
yeah, maybe. But it's just like, hey, an important part of Zen practice is radical acceptance, and I'm just going
Yeah, right.
to fully accept what is there is what is there, and hopefully it's good enough.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely good enough. Is there anything, as we wrap here, is there anything I have not asked you that you want to share with the audience?
Well, we talked a lot, and it makes sense because of your show. We talked a lot about the Zen and Buddhist
Mm-hmm.
teachings
Mm-hmm.
and that. But I just want to say, the novel is a little bit of a romance. It's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in this particular mystery, you know who done it, but you don't know what he done. And you did mention the nature writing, so I just want it's not a dry exposition of Buddhism, I hope. Um,
Correct. It's
and
not,
hopefully it just gets
yes.
snuck into the story. but it is a close look at a secret world of a Zen monastery. And I've
Yeah.
spent a lot of time in remote Zen monasteries
Mhm.
engaged in monastic practice. So
Mhm.
I really was able, I hope, to share a window into a world that people don't get a chance to see. So I just wanted to put that in. And then
Mhm.
I just want to make sure people know the name.
Yes,
I'm going to
yes.
put it up there one more time because, I
Yes,
book, right?
sure.
All in water. And
Yeah,
there's my name. You search it. It's available on all the normal websites, Amazon,
yeah,
etc. And so it's easy to find in those places. And so, yeah, I'd love it if people read it because I don't have some big publishing powerhouse behind me that's promoting it. It's just gonna be
yeah,
because of word of mouth from people that like it. And I'm really glad,
yeah.
Marianella, that you did and that you invited me to
I
talk.
absolutely, absolutely. And as you were saying, what I like is the diversity of voices. There is a character that curses more than anybody else I've ever heard, right? And then there is the sacredness of the Dharma that is threaded through that. And I think that's the beauty. Like you really, I mean, spirituality is the mundane, is the difficult, is the beautiful, is the ineffable, is love, is I mean, this guy with his plan of finding love and sex. Oh, I'm giving away the novel. It is beautiful what you did, and the variety of ecosystems that are intertwined there. So I thank you so much for that, Tim, and I wish you best of luck with this novel, the distribution, the getting it into as many hands as possible, so you can hurry up and write the next one.
Thank you
Very
so much.
in a very zen way.
Yeah. Very, very zen hurrying up. Well, thanks for having me on. Marianella, I hope I run into you again in New Hampshire and maybe in a warmer time
Yes.
than the last.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for listening to What a Word is Worth. You can access today's interview at many of the platforms, including YouTube. And if you are interested, hit the subscribe button in our YouTube channel. And if you find this program beneficial, leave us a review. I am with you in love and compassion always, always, always.